All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin, I have an announcement for international guests. From now on, please take a receiver for your English interpretation. Thank you. 네, 세션 3에 이어서 네 번째 세션으로 여러분께 인사드립니다.
Following session 3, now we are ready to open session 4. So, since the opening ceremony yesterday, I have been repeatedly emphasizing the theme of the ICFC 2024 One Ocean, One Fishing Community Challenges for Fishing Communities in an Era of Great Transformation. I think this theme holds various meanings, but it emphasizes cooperation and community, the sense of togetherness. And in this respect, in session 4, we will be remembering the number 1 as we get into session 4 in earnest. I think I really heard this word multiple times throughout the conference, climate change. Climate change is no longer the distant future. It impacts our oceans, our fishing communities, the groundwaters, our daily lives. And therefore, it is definitely something that we need to work together to bring about change and innovation to find solutions for these common issues. This session will be looking into energy transformation and responding to climate change of fishing communities and ports. We will be sharing national policies and best cases to come up with more specific cooperative mechanisms. And this is also related to UN SDG number 7 and also number 13, which are clean energy and climate change response. And to open the session 4 of ICFC 2024, I'd like to invite Mr. Kim Hyun-tae from the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries to the stage for congratulatory remarks.
네, 안녕하십니까.
Good afternoon. I am Kim Hyun-tae from the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. I'd like to warmly welcome all of you to the ICFC 2024 once again. The theme of the conference is the One Ocean, One Fishing Community Challenges for Fishing Communities in an Era of Great Transformation, as you would already know by now. We are here together to find solutions to these common issues. In particular, climate change is one of the most urgent issues faced by fishing communities and ports, and it is also a global threat. This session will be an opportunity to discuss diverse strategies and share best cases to overcome these hurdles. We will have presentation from UN FAO on the Blue Port Initiative. We will also have an opportunity to learn about the electric fishing boats that are hybrid based on cooperation of Iceland and Korea. So there are multiple strategies taken by countries all over the world to address climate change. Sharing these experiences and the outcomes will help us develop strategies for energy and technology transformation and come up with real and concrete policy measures. We have Mr. Kil Hong-gun as moderator from Hangyang National University. I would like to thank Professor for his time. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of the participants for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. Thank you.
네, 실장님 축사 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you for those kind remarks. Please mind the steps. Please give him one more round of applause. So we have one more very important guest to give us one more congratulatory remark. Please invite Mr. Lee Chunu, Chair of the Korea Fisheries Resource Agency, to the stage. Industry members from home and abroad, distinguished guests, experts, and professionals. Good afternoon. I am Lee Chunu, Chair of the Korea Fisheries Resources Agency. I'd like to first extend my deepest gratitude to all the participants who have gathered to discuss the sustainable development and future of global fishing communities despite your busy schedules. Especially, I'd like to thank Mr. Kim Hyun-tae from the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries and Mr. Kil Hong-gun, Professor of Hangyeong National University, and the presenters who have prepared insightful speeches for today's event. The ICFC is an important platform to share experience and wisdom for the development of fishing communities and industries. I am certain that this forum will contribute to exploring solutions for economic revitalization of fishing communities and sustainable marine resource use, which are common goals. Today's global fishing communities are faced with global issues such as climate change, higher temperatures, and depletion of marine resources. And against this backdrop, close international cooperation and innovative solutions are necessary to address these issues. FIRA is a public agency with expertise in marine resource preservation and management. Through the Marine Forest Project, we are increasing the volume of blue carbon, which is one of the policies and strategies to achieve for Korea to deliver carbon neutrality by 2050. Based on scientific research, we are preparing to acquire international certification for the marine forest seaweeds as a new source of carbon absorption. We would like to share such experience and know-how with the global community and also learn from the best practices of other countries. Lastly, I hope that the ICFC will become a starting point to open a bright future for fishing communities and industries around the world. Let us hold hands together and work together for the sustainable development of fishing communities. I am sure that the wisdom and passion filling this hall will propel large-scale change for the future. Once again, I'd like to thank the organizers of ICFC 2024, and I would also like to thank the foreign guests. I hope you get an opportunity to enjoy the beautiful fall of Jeju Island. Thank you. Thank you for those kind remarks. Like he said, Jeju Island, especially Seogwipo, has breathtaking landscape. I hope that you will get an opportunity to enjoy the beautiful autumn season of Korea and Jeju Island. Please give Mr. Kim and Mr. Lee one more round of applause. Now, let's dive into the session. This session has 4 presentations and panel discussions. We will be talking about the sustainable development of fishing communities and blue ports. We have a short video prepared, and we will be starting the presentations after the video.
네, 여러분 박수 보내.
Please give another round of big applause. Then with an innovative and bright future of the fishing communities in mind, let us move on to the first presentation. I would like to invite fish value chain specialist Lucia Lopez de Aragon of UNFAO. Please welcome our speaker with a big hand.
Thanks. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lucia Lopez de Aragon. I am a fish value chain specialist at FAO Fisheries and Aquaculture Division. I'm here to speak today about our work. We have a beautiful initiative to share with all of you. It's called the Blue Ports Initiative. It's very recent. It's actually a baby still. It was born in 2019. And I'm here to share with you our work and especially the role of fishing ports in climate change adaptation. Before I start speaking about our work, let's remember why ports are important for the fishing communities. I mean, this is probably obvious to all of us, but let's remember that ports are actually hubs where many activities take place. All of these activities, they have an impact in people's lives. They are very important for the economy of the local or regional or national communities, for the employment, and also for the access to marine resources. So all these spaces and activities support the entire communities by allowing fishing activities, trade, transport, basically all the important nodes of the fish value chain. So if we maximize this impact of all these activities in the communities' lives, we will be able to enable ports to serve as valuable assets that support the strategic and the operational local development initiatives. So back in 2018-19, we did a global consultation with different stakeholders, obviously with fishing ports as well, and we identify the main challenges that fishing ports are facing. Here in the screen you can see social challenges, economic challenges, and environmental challenges. These are very common and very obvious as well. I'm not going to stop in all of them, but one of the most common challenges that fishing ports are facing in the environmental dimension of a port is climate change. So if we have all of these challenges, social, economic, environmental, even governance challenges, how can we address all of them and help fishing ports to become more sustainable? The response is that we need a comprehensive and a holistic response, meaning that we need to see all the challenges together. It's not about climate change only. That also has an impact on social and economic challenges. And we need to include all the stakeholders of the value chain. So what is the Blue Ports Initiative? The Blue Ports Initiative is our response to this holistic approach. We help and assist countries and fishing ports to support their blue transformation or their pathway towards sustainability in their strategic and operational processes. So in all the general management of a fishing port. So this is all beautiful, but what do we mean by a blue port? Well, a blue port, what we understand, it's a hub for regional, national, and local sustainable development in terms of value creation across the social, economic, and environmental dimensions. But if you ask me what is a blue port in one word, I would define it as harmony. So all these pictures that you see here are different pictures taken from Blue Ports Initiative countries. And a blue port is the infrastructure and the city-port relations of Namibia, is the tourism of Spain, is the schools in the fishing port of Argentina, is the traceability systems in Indonesia, the fish market of Morocco, and the biodiversity protection of Ecuador. So if you put all of these pictures together in one country, or this is all one fishing port, this is what a blue port is. It's the coordination of all the activities in a fishing port, which is not only fishing. And we put together all the relevant stakeholders that collaboratively address the social, economic, and environmental challenges of all of these activities. So to enter a little bit more in the climate challenges in fishing ports, we identify 4 ways of approaching this issue in fishing ports: infrastructure, funding, governance, and aquatic food value chain. So in terms of infrastructure, obviously climate change affects fishing port by the sea level rise, by the extreme weather events, and obviously water quality and ecosystem health. Here in this column, you can see very, very general solutions that fishing ports can implement to as a climate change response. I'm sure that my colleagues will speak more technically about these solutions or this response, but in terms of infrastructure, it is important to involve new materials and new designs within the fishing port. In terms of funding, there is a lot of problems in adaptation and the mitigation cost, as well as access to financing. There is a lot of innovative instruments and inclusive finance tools that we can implement within fishing ports. In terms of governance, there is a problem with decentralization and a lack of regulation, as well as a lack of community engagement. For this, we need a lot of elaboration of adaptation plans, a baseline so we can measure the impact of the activities that we are implementing, and multi-stakeholder cooperation. And finally, for the fish value chain, to understand what is the availability of the fisheries resources, it is a problem, obviously, the operational costs that are rising and access to market. For this, it's important to have this baseline or idea of what is the situation, the assets of the stocks, looking for transparency and digitalization of the traceability systems, and what is the impact of all these operations within a port. So what is the role of a blue port in climate mitigation? In this graph, you can see different strategies that fishing ports can implement as a climate change response. So in terms of the use of clean energy, I know that the Port of Busan here in South Korea, they have great practices in solar energy systems and the use of hydrogen stations for port equipment. In energy efficiency, I know that the Port of Callao in Peru, they are very involved in the decarbonization strategy. In the use of sustainable infrastructure, Malaysia has great examples of the use of sustainable office buildings using new materials and new designs. In ecological restorations in the Port of Salomon, they have done mangrove restoration. Obviously, the good practices for sustainable fishing, like the Port of Bergen in Norway, the use of science-based catch quotas. And finally, the marine ecosystem protection, like the plant of marine forest in the Port of Cartagena, Spain. This is just a few examples of what fishing ports can do in their response to climate change. I'm going to finish soon. I just want to explain a little bit what the Blue Ports Initiative is, what we do. I was saying a few slides before that the Blue Ports Initiative assists fishing ports and countries towards this pathway towards sustainability in their strategic and operational process in a fishing port. Here we have 5 categories of activities that we do in the BPI. The establishment of a global network. We have already 22 countries around the world. We have partnerships with different international organizations. We do have a very strong capacity building program for knowledge sharing with workshops and seminars. We do develop innovative tools for knowledge management like guidances, papers, roadmaps, repository online at our website, and we do formulate and implement strategies and actions in fishing ports. Sometimes these activities are regional, sometimes they are just national or even local. And finally, the real measure of impact of all these activities in the world. Just some of the activities that we are doing in each of these categories. In the establishment of a global network, we have already had 6 global workshops with our countries, our focal points. We have over 25 ports and fisheries administrations represented. We do have very strong cooperation with other organizations. And this is very important because FAO Fisheries and Aquaculture Division have a competence in fishing and fisheries. But obviously in a fishing port, there are more activities related to that. So we do ask for the expertise of other organizations or international experts to bring their knowledge and expertise. For example, last year we did a workshop in Morocco about city-port relationships, and we asked our colleagues of AIVP who are involved into this topic to bring their own experts. And that's very important because it enriches the discussions with countries. In terms of the elaboration of tools for knowledge management, we do have papers like Marine Spatial Planning document with IOC UNESCO, a roadmap to a blue port that we are currently under the process review of adapting this roadmap to the Asia-Pacific context. We do have a repository of good practices and a lot of different publications on the experiences and lessons learned in different training courses. I'm not going to stop into the whole capacity building program because it's super long, but we do have every year around 3 online and some in-presential workshops and seminars and webinars. This picture, for example, was taken last year in Ecuador in a workshop on traceability systems. In terms of projects and actions, we have 3 working groups, one social, economic, and environmental, where any stakeholder of countries are invited to participate. We do formulate together projects, joint projects. In the environmental group last year, they decided they wanted to elaborate a document, a paper altogether about clean energy and blue ports, and is currently undergoing. We do identify specific projects and actions. We are currently in the negotiation phase of projects in Colombia, Argentina, India, and Sao Tome and Principe. And finally, the communication. So at the end, this work is very beautiful, but if you don't communicate it or you don't share it and find connection with other people's work, it makes no sense. You don't reach anywhere. So we do have a lot of those communications. We do have our official website. We disseminate our work in these conferences to link our work with other people's work and find that collaboration. And we do have permanent communication internally within FAO in different divisions, but most importantly, externally with different stakeholders. This is currently all the BPI countries. Central America is represented by the SICA region. And this is everything from the Blue Ports Initiative work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. 네, 특히 그
Blue Port Initiative, the role of BPI. Thank you for highlighting the BPI and its role.
We will move on to the second presentation. The presenter will be Mr. Oh Tae-gon from Korea Fisheries Resources Agency, and his topic will be Marine Forest and Fishing Port Gardening Project in Korea. Please give him a big round of applause. Good afternoon. I am Oh Tae-gon from Korea Fisheries Resource Agency. Very nice to meet you all today. The previous speaker talked about the Blue Ports Initiative, and during the presentation there was briefly the mentioning of marine forest. I think this session is talking about carbon credit, especially carbon reduction credit. And I'll try to bring about a slightly different perspective. So what is marine forest? And how can we use marine forest to build a blue carbon complex within the ocean? So I will try to be talking about the specific mechanism to achieve that purpose. So first of all, climate change affects Korea and the entire global community. And this is significantly and severely changing marine environment. I think everyone here already knows that and has felt that. So how is climate change changing the ocean? And if marine forests are disappearing, how can we restore it? So those will be the key points of the presentation. And then how can we connect the marine forest with blue carbon? And how can we connect this with fishing communities and the fishing ports? So this will be the main topics of the presentation. First, climate change and marine forest and its relationship. So industrialization has emitted CO2 to the air, and the pH figure is going down. And that is also impacting the ocean. You can see the reduction of the size of the shells. And this is causing significant serious changes in the marine environment. So average temperature in the ocean rose by 0.5 degrees. But for Korea, it went up by 1.8 degrees. So that's 4 times higher than the global average. So for these type of the marine animals who feed on seaweeds are being impacted, and that in result you see the barren ground in the marine environment. So it's like a fire in the mountain forest, and you need lots of seaweeds, high density of seaweeds within the ocean for it to be rich in different organisms and animals. But that is not happening anymore. We are seeing so many patches of these barren grounds under the water. This is not just a problem of Korea, it's common around the world. Korea and Japan, I think, are more severely impacted. However, when we did a survey in 2023, 36% of the surface that can grow seaweeds underwater is experiencing desertification, or they're becoming barren grounds. So what was green in the past, 40% of it is disappearing and is becoming barren ground. So like I mentioned, this is like a big fire on the mainland. Then to restore the environment, we take afforestation measures. So if we see barren ground under the water, we need to find ways to restore the marine forest under the water. So regarding the methodology of afforestation underwater, ultimately, we need to restore the ecology and ensure like nursing grounds and coral reefs so that they can be sustainable in the water. So these are 6 functions of the marine forest. So it is a habitat of marine organisms, and seaweeds are vegetation, so it absorbs CO2 to grow, and it produces oxygen that is beneficial to the other marine organisms and to human beings. And we also use seaweeds as a source of bioenergy and ingredients for pharmaceuticals. It also holds various nutrients that is beneficial for the humans. And seaweeds, due to its properties of high nitrogen and other nutrients, the proliferation of seaweeds on the water can help clean up the ocean waters. So I will go into how we can achieve afforestation underwater. From 2009 to 2023, 317.2 kilometers and 245 sites were subject to government efforts of restoration. So in 2022, it was 291 kilometers squared. But 2030, we have target of restoring 540 kilometers squares. So we are working together closely with the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries to this end.
경우는 이제 안반이 필요하기 때문에 부착을 할
So what is important is to create an environment. So we need to clean the substrate. And we have these long lines where we can hang. And then there is the spore bag. And the seeds will be proliferated and they will be planted in the cleaned substrates or the rocks. And for large-scale seaweeds, we can directly transplant on the rocks. And I will show you in detail this later on. We use drones to survey the environment and also to manage this after we have built this ecosystem. So first, we are cleaning the substrate, the rock. If this is not clean, then we cannot really transplant the samples. So we first clean the substrate. And you have the spore bag. This spore bag is installed here, and we use the long line so that the seeds can automatically move on to the substrate or the rock. This time we are releasing the spore directly on the rock, so there are multiple methods that we can use to create this environment. And then we monitor the growth of the seaweeds and so on. And urchins and abalones that feed on seaweeds, if the population grows excessively, then these efforts may be weakened and undermined. So we need appropriate level of these organisms. And we use epoxy and different types of materials to ensure that the seaweed naturally but firmly sticks to the rocks. And we have been making these efforts since 2009. So it may seem obvious, but with barren land, the biodiversity is only 1.7, but if we increase the vegetation in the water, it goes up to 2.8. And we are working to achieve 3.0. If you look at the biomass, in barren land, like you see, the rocks, the increase of 94.5% of biomass of seaweed was observed. And let's see a video. So there is no seaweed. There are some urchins. So climate change and different environmental impact has caused all this ground underwater to turn barren. But it can be restored like this. So we are using different types of seaweeds. And if the seaweeds come back, the environment can become healthy again. So we are cleaning the rocks or the substrate. And then we are planting the bags, and then we are now attaching the seaweeds. So for the larger size seaweeds, we can directly attach it to the bedrock. And these are the 6 functions of the sea, of the marine forest. So I talked about the different methods that we can use to restore the vegetation in waters, and now I will move on to blue carbon. So like you know, there is black carbon, green carbon, and blue carbon. carbon emits CO2. So second half of my presentation will be talking about eco-friendly vessels. So it will be focusing on reducing black carbon. Currently, I'm talking about blue carbon. We are directly removing carbon from the air. So blue carbon is 50 times more effective than green carbon. So seaweeds are very effective in terms of absorbing CO2. So the second function of the marine forest, reduction of CO2, is very important aspect of marine forest. For seaweeds, well, we are making multifaceted efforts to receive international certification. And so we are studying how much it absorbs CO2 and how much it emits CO2. And we are using scientific research methods to make accurate calculations. And to the IPCC, we are planning to get it registered so that we can get these seaweeds receive blue carbon certification. I believe in 3 to 5 years, seaweeds will be certified as blue carbon source. The 2030 Korean government NDC is 106 tons is the target, and the marine forest is a big part of those efforts. And to calculate the carbon absorption ability of marine forest, we installed machinery and monitored how much CO2 is being absorbed by forest and by type of seaweed. And as a result, we have some complicated formulas here. Annually, 337 ton was removed per kilometer squared in the oceans. So it's around 45,000 vehicles equivalent that is being removed from the oceans. So seaweeds only live 3 to 5 years. Their lifespan does not extend as long as trees in the mountains. But when they die, they are dismantled and decommissioned. But we figured out that the HCO3 is an important element that is produced in the decaying process, and we found that this was quite helpful to the marine ecology. And through scientific papers, we are trying to get this process certified. So how can we apply this to ports? So I'm towards the end of my presentation. So you have these small seaweeds around 20 to 30 centimeters, and we raise this. So we attach these to this type of bricks, and then we use, this is the F. So our organization is named FIRA, and so we are trying to write FIRA in the oceans here. And this is not all seaweed, this is bamboo. So why we brought bamboo as a sample? So even bamboo trees can be important ingredients of ecological restoration. This is sandfish. They can only nurse if there is seaweed there. And so these are the eggs. So this is not a port, but the bamboo and different seaweeds that I've showed earlier can serve this role. And it can be an important contributor to the overall ecology. So this is plastic that melts. It's made of cornstarch, and it takes 3 to 5 years to melt completely. And we can stick the seaweeds using this block on the rocks, on the substrate. So there can be different ways to create ports or gardens to create gardens in ports. There's a large port and small port. So everything is concentrated in the large port. So the smaller port is becoming vacant and barren. And we try to come up with strategies to revive the smaller port. So we raise the seaweeds. And we have kelp and seaweed and different types of seaweeds. And then on the rocks, we directly transplanted the seaweeds. And 6 months after, they did quite well. This is me, and I'm in there to monitor the ecology. And you can see that the transplantation has been quite successful. And then we see the marine organisms coming back. This is the last slide. I would like to say that when we holistically develop a port, it can be about introducing electric boats, or it can be about restoring the vegetation in the oceans to increase its role as absorbing and creating blue carbon. There can be different ways, so I think we can become creative. I think creativity will be important to develop and clean the ports of global fishing communities. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O. We have had 2 presentations. I think you may be wondering if you're going to have a Q&A session later. We will have Q&A session during panel discussion, and if we do not have enough time, please do not hesitate to approach the speakers and the panelists with your questions. And we have interpretation receivers. Just remember that even for the Korean presenters, the materials are in English. So if you go to the booklet or the leaflet, there is a QR code, and that will take you to our official website. On the website, you can download the materials in Korean. Lastly, we have timers in front. And so I would like to ask all the presenters, the panelists, and the moderator to monitor the timers so that we can keep the promised time.
콜벳
I'd like to invite Mr. Colbert Ortarso de Prave of Granafold for his presentation titled Iceland's Transition to Electric Fishing Vessels, Achievements and Challenges. Please welcome him with a big hand.
안녕하세요. First, I would like to give our heartfelt thanks for the invitation. I love being here in Korea. It's my second visit here to Jeju Island. I come from Iceland. A little bit about myself. This is me on the boat fishing. I'm a former congressman, the Parliament of Iceland, and as such, and both in the Nordic Council, I've always been participating in sort of sustainable committees regarding the environment. So when I left the Parliament, I moved back to my old hometown. This is Siglufjörður, small fishing village in the north of Iceland. As I showed in the last picture, went out fishing and did a lot of other things, and also sort of started this company called Grænafl, which means green power. So what we are doing is working on the electrification of small fishing vessels. We are looking at getting batteries and electric propulsion motors, having everything in the appropriate size and such. And we're also looking into hybrid solutions, and I will come to that a little bit later in my presentation. The process that we are working with is retrofitting. It is in many ways more difficult because you have to, not every boat is the same size and the layout. But the way we are thinking it is that if you can retrofit, you can make the energy transition go faster, because you take out the existing engine and put in the new equipment. It takes a shorter time than building the boat from scratch. Also, that is a part of the circular economy notion, that you don't build new boats and throw away the old ones, you reuse the old boats. So the vessels that we are working with in our first phase of our project are 10 to 15 meter longs. They weigh approximately 3.5 tons or 12 long tons, but they are very big and powerful engines. Icelandic fishermen, they really like to sail fast. They go out very early in the morning and they go full throttle to the fishing grounds, and then they fill up the boats or catch what they are allowed to catch. We have a quota on our fishing system in Iceland, and then they have the full throttle back. So they use way too much oil. And as we know, our common project as a mankind is to find new energy solutions in regards to response to climate change and stop using oil. So our project has multiple phases. So we are both working with full electricity when it can be applied, but also we look into hybrid solutions that will really lower the oil usage of each boat. So you have a hybrid between oil and electricity with batteries. Because we are an R&D company in this environment that we have a lot of boats and we have just the ocean, we are by the ocean. We can also go into a lot of R&D phases in regards to alternative energy productions, be it wind or solar panels at the boats themselves. So interesting times ahead of us in our R&D phase. This is just some technical information regarding the batteries. We have been in cooperation with Korean producers and Korean organizations, and we have a joint project with them. Again, my hometown. I'm very proud of my hometown, but this is taken from the south, this picture. If you sail, so you're looking north, if you would step into a boat by the harbor and sail north, next stop would be the North Pole. So we are an Arctic country. So it's the northernmost township in Iceland. So there are a lot of challenges in regards to electrification, in regards to extreme situation, in regards with weather and the waves. But also we are in connection with a very fragile nature. So it's our responsibility there to really look into how we sort of act in regards to this fragile Arctic nature. So in that regards, one day, 2.5 years ago, I knocked on the door of KMI, here, Korea Maritime Institute in Pusan, and asked if there was any willingness to sort of make a joint project in regards to this electrification of smaller fishing vessels. Korea being a very high productive country with a good technology, Iceland having the boats and the marine technology needed for this project in regards to retrofitting. So April 22, I visited KMI. And then last year, a delegation from Korea, KMI and some companies came to my hometown, Siglufjörður, and looked at the boats that we are working on. December 10th, 2023, we signed an MOU with Korea Maritime Institute and some other parties as well, Pohang, City Hall, and a lot of Korean companies and Icelandic companies. And yesterday we signed some provisional contracts as well. So the project is going very well. What we And again, we had a visit from Korea to Siglufjörður last month. There we inspected the boats for retrofitting and made these 3D drawings or plans of the boats necessary to do the technology sort of development needed for each boat. So there are many challenges in this project. When you're retrofitting, when you're stripping the boat of the diesel engine, you have an already built boat with spaces developed for each part of the engine. So we need to rethink about how you structure the boat. In regards to the batteries, the weight of the batteries, you cannot, of course, there's a limit to how much they can weigh when you put it into a small boat, relatively small boat in Iceland. The difference between the batteries and the oil, for example, because we have very large oil tanks in this boat, the oil gradually gets lower and the boat lighter, but not the batteries. The power, I told you about the Icelandic way of the fishermen, just to give full throttle, to feel the wind in your hair when you're sailing out into the Arctic sun. You need to rethink about that, how you actually use our resources, how you act in the Arctic nature as well. So you have to lower your speed as well. And of course, we need to think about the range. You have to get to the fishing grounds. You have to operate there, and then you have to get back home again, because no one wants to be out of power when you're up in this Arctic situation. Although the fishing that we are focusing on mainly takes part in the summertime. But we are finding ways, and the reason I think this project is very important, not just for my small hometown, Siglufjörður, our company, or Iceland, but for Korea and the world as well, is because we are jointly finding ways. It's an international cooperation. It is a global situation that we are, and the problem that we are facing. So global cooperation is needed. We cannot think in silos, each country for itself. We have to join hands and cooperate. So, of course, with full electric boats, you need charging stations as well. There would be no use in having an electric boat if you could not charge it. So, a part of our project is one of Iceland's largest power companies called HS Orka, which sort of specializes in renewable energies, power sources, mainly geothermal. So they are very close to sort of geothermal heat, too close these days because they are just a couple of kilometers away from an active volcano now in Iceland, volcanic eruption, but that will of course refuel their geothermal needs. So everything is in good order then. But because this project is creating a new market, so we have to look at it as a whole. We have to look at it from the perspective of the boat owners with their boats, and also you have to apply the charging stations. So we have to look at it from all aspects. In a cooperation with HS Orka, we are putting up these power banks in my hometown, Siglufjörður, which will have a distribution to smaller pollards. So it's a one hub and many outlets. In regards to that, we will be looking at sort of if we can actually use the charging for electric trucks or vehicles, bigger vehicles, when the time comes for that. But with this, we aim to make the harbor at my hometown for the first oil-free harbor for the smaller boats in the near future. But of course, it will take many steps. Yes, as I said, we're just putting up, and the first one will be in Siglufjörður, but we will put up charging stations in other harbors as well in Iceland as the project moves along. So why are we doing this? My distinguished speakers before me sort of emphasized the climate change, what is needed. This is the approved action of Iceland, of Korea, of the EU. We all know that we have to get there. There's no discussion about this. This is approved, and in many ways this is not enough. Iceland has very sort of, we are aiming for net zero in 2040. I think the EU and Korea is aiming for it in 2050. We in many ways are lucky that we have the geothermal heating for all the housing, and we have ample resources of energy. But still it's difficult in Iceland. So again, an international cooperation between an energy-rich country and a production-rich and technology-rich country as Korea is in my ways, very, very interesting for the whole world. And when you look at the sort of marine industry, you always look at the larger ships. You wait for what the large trawlers or tankers will do, or the cargo vessels. But most of the vessels in the world are small. So when you combine them, they are a large part of the energy output, the pollution output of the marine industry. So we need to look at the smaller vessels as well. So what is to gain? In Iceland, it's 140 liters of oil, 2022. In Korea, I found on the web, it was 1.35 million tons of CO2 that the fishing vessels sort of, how do you say this, made or emissioned from the boats. And the fishing sector of the world accounts for 4 million tons of CO2. So there's a lot to gain in energy transition in the marine sector. As I said earlier, international cooperation is needed. When you look at it on the map, it's not the first thing you think about. Korea and Iceland, they should cooperate, but they really match. The technology know-how in each country, the on-field development of solution in Iceland, and the equipment production technology in Korea makes Iceland a testing ground for Korean product that then can be sort of given to other countries as well. And we can be together a beacon to the world. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your presentation. In your presentation, as you explained, the electrification of small fishing vessels as part of your effort, you explained that you sought the cooperation with a Korean partner. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
소개할 시간.
We'll move on to the fourth presenter from Korea Maritime Institute, Mr. Ko Dong-un, Senior Researcher. Please give him a big round of applause.
반갑습니다. 오늘 이 뜻깊은 자리
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this very meaningful event. I am Ko Dong-hun from the Korea Maritime Institute. So I feel that the ICFC has really expanded in scale compared to last year. And I find a lot of people are sitting in this hall looking at me, and so it makes me a little bit nervous, but I would like to emphasize that I am very honored to be here. Today, I will be talking about carbon reduction measures, especially about the development of electric fishing boats and some of the challenges that we face. And Mr. Kolbet Uttarson Profe talked about Iceland's case. In this talk, we will be talking about Korea's efforts in promoting electric fiction boats. So just to briefly give you some background. A couple of years ago, climate change started to become a global pressing evident issue, and the government started to make requests to the relevant agencies. Of course, we knew global warming was happening from many years ago, but it was time to really develop real policies. So we were developing strategies for global warming response from the air, from the land, and for the ocean, and so on. And my specialty is in ocean and marine environment. So my role was to develop strategies and policies to ensure that Korea's oceans and marine environment will be well equipped to address climate change issues. So for me, it was about energy transformation, reducing reliance on fossil fuels to reduce the emission of carbon. Then how can we address that in the marine industry? Who is emitting the most amount of carbon? I believe that by far it was the fishing boats. And most countries have vessels and fleets. And I believe that for all of the countries, fishing boats will be a significant contributor of carbon emission. So Korea has goal to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. I believe that Korea is not the only case. Many countries have made similar commitments. This means that we are going to move away from fossil fuels. And against this backdrop, when we talk with IMO and UNFCCC, when we look at their materials, at that time, Korea was the 7th largest greenhouse gas emitter in the world. And this year, the UN published a report on energy transition of fishing fleets. If I may direct your attention to the bar chart. The dark blue is motorized fishing fleet, and the sky blue is the fishing fleet. And you see the red dot is the CO2 emission. And so this chart is a regional breakdown of that data. So China has a separate data. Korea is included in Asia. So cumulatively, Asia is the biggest contributor of carbon. Also has the largest fleet. And if you look at Europe, their fleet is small. But with the small fleet, they are still a high emitter of greenhouse gases. So even if you're using the same fossil fuel, the emission of greenhouse gases can be different. Maybe there is some technological issues. So the UN published this report, and many countries around the world announced their commitment to carbon neutrality in 2050. But before that, as an interim goal, when we reach 2030, what kind of implementation efforts have the countries made? I think there will be an intermediate monitoring of progress around 2030. And to accelerate progress, I think Korea needs to make more proactive efforts. And fishing boats is the largest portion of the total fleets in Korea. As of 2022, there are around 40,000 fishing boats. 93% of that is below 100,000 tons, coastal boats. So this is the first chart, far right, 2022. And if you look at the chart on the bottom, gas emission from marine industry or the fisheries is more than double that of gas emitted from agricultural and forestry industries. And so the carbon emitted by fishing boat is a pressing issue. And then there is the Ukraine-Russia war and various geopolitical issues that is causing the increase of oil prices. If we look at the trend from 2000 to 2023, it's been maintained at very high levels. So the fishers are being challenged by these high oil prices. For Korea, if I can summarize the situation, the fishing fleet accounts for around 70% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. And the average emission by Korea is around 50,000 tons. Korea's sea temperature is on rising trend. There can be multiple reasons for that, but one of them would be greenhouse gases. And the cause of greenhouse gases is fishing boats. Then what can we do to turn fishing boats to become more eco-friendly? If we can reduce emission from fishing boats, I believe that it can be a very effective strategy to address some of the issues related to global warming that the ocean and marine environment is facing. So in conclusion, without energy transition targeting fishing boats, achievement of 2050 carbon neutrality is close to impossible. And therefore, we believe we need to prioritize greenifying the fishing boats. So against this backdrop, recently we have been working to develop eco-friendly fishing boats, meaning that the boats are using green energy. And one of the main projects is developing hybrid fishing boats. So the pure electric boat was the priority, but as you know, once Korean boats operate in the sea, they stay up to 1 week in the oceans to catch fish. With a pure electric boat, you cannot operate in that manner because the batteries will be all consumed. Because you cannot find many recharging stations in ports, and they cannot come back and forth. So the direction slightly shifted to developing hybrid fishing boats instead. You see the green part in the diagram. This is the basic structure and system of hybrid boats. If the boat is going to move forward, you need a propeller. There are two systems that turns the propeller. One is the engine, that's a diesel engine. And the green part is an electric battery and motor. So this is why we call it a hybrid system. you use electric batteries and motors, and then you also have a diesel engine working in tandem. So it goes back and forth to have higher energy efficiency. And one key challenge here is that mostly the governments regulate fishing boats. So if you think of a vessel and fishing boat the same, the length of the vessel is regulated, or the weight of the vessel is regulated, and these are legally, officially regulated. So whether they limit the length or the weight, if that is inscribed in the legislation, the length of the boat has to be fixed. But this green square here, the electric motor and battery, if we put that in the boat, we need more space. But in most countries, the size of the boat is limited legally. So we could not find enough space for these equipment and facilities. So there was these legal limitations. And I believe there needs to be some amendment or revision in the legislation and regulation to remove this hurdle. And the battery here is a fishing storage in existing boats. If we put in the battery here, another challenge is that it will reduce the storage area. But storage space is essential if the fishers are to catch the fish and they need to store it. And so if the storage space is limited, they will not want to purchase this boat, which means that even if we develop this boat, it will not be very popular among the fishers. And the legal restriction on the size of the boats, like I said, cannot be increased. And if we are to develop an electric boat in Korea, there is an even bigger problem. We do not have charging stations at ports. So the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure, has not been fully laid out yet. Then, while we were thinking about these challenges, we coincidentally met our partners from Iceland. Like you just heard from the previous presentation, they are quite advanced in terms of laying out the charging infrastructure, and they had a very long-term oriented approach. Iceland is also one of the leading countries in terms of carbon reduction and achieving carbon neutrality. So Iceland has made significant effort in that area. Like you saw in the image, for this boat here, Iceland is making effort to develop an electric version of it. The electric boats, if we compare the ones in Korea and in Iceland, first of all, the target of Iceland is a pure electric boat for one-day operation. They want to change daily fishing boats to pure electric boats. Korea is aiming for a hybrid boat, so there is a difference there. And second, at major ports, the battery charging system has already made significant advancements in Iceland, but that is not the case in Korea. And also, Ireland is developing multiple sources of energy that can propel boats. So I think for the last one, Korea and Iceland is on the same page. So Iceland's policy for developing green boats, Korea's policy for developing green boats. There is a big gap between them, and by exchanging information and working on joint projects, I think the outcome will have global competitiveness and will be an opportunity to find breakthroughs, because these policy objectives and the know-how and expertise is toward the same direction, but they are at different ends. If we can reduce the gap by cooperating, I felt, and all the researchers felt, that there can be significant contributions to the outcome. So KMI has been working for the past 3 years to work closely with Iceland. So several years ago, we conducted a workshop to learn about the fishing policies and related technologies of Iceland. And many agencies and companies participated in the MOU and workshops. There are a total of 27 agencies that are taking part. Out of the 26 agencies, we have JMP, Hana Aerospace. These Korean firms are already top-notch companies in the global market. They are also taking part in our research. So 27 agencies signed the Korea-Iceland MOU for developing electric boats. So these companies, Grenapu, Sleepin in Iceland, so they are making a team of Avengers. And I believe that there will be significant progress made in this area in the future based on such strong cooperation. Local governments are also very interested. Like I've said, the battery charging infrastructure is important. And in Pohang, the K Battery Industrial Park has been designated to develop batteries and charging infrastructure for ships. Also, we are in Jeju Island, and Jeju Island is also taking proactive measures. I had a lot to say, but I don't have a lot of time, so I tried to be comprehensive and holistic. So there is some work to do, R&D, we need to develop the master plan and so on. And I made a special request. I asked us to put up a photo at the end. Yes, this one. We took this photo yesterday. We have representative from Iceland, hybrid boat of Iceland, pure electric boat of Iceland, the amphibian boat. For these two boats, Iceland company and Korean companies are going to cooperate with each other to achieve energy transformation for those two types of boats. And we signed an MOU for that. And I believe that we are now going beyond North Europe to venture into a very large Asian market. I hope that you will be supportive of this cause. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for the presentation. Mr. Ko, you said you were nervous, but we could not tell that you were nervous at all. For the 20 minutes, thank you for that very informative presentation. So then I will try to be quick. So those were the 4 presentations that were prepared for this session. We are going to move on to the panel discussion. We need to reorganize the stage for the discussion. So I'd like to ask the speakers and panelists for just one moment. I have a couple of announcements to make during that time. So I talked about how you can use the QR code to land on our official website. There is a survey there. If you complete the survey, go to the information desk and there will be a souvenir for you to take home. Tomorrow from 9:30 a.m., the fifth session will begin, and we also have a closing ceremony tomorrow as well. So it will be the last day of the ICFC 2024, so I ask for your continued attendance. So we are just bringing up some chairs. Just please wait with us for around 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you.
네, 이제 마지막 마이크까지.
I think we are all set. I would like to invite our full presenters and 3 panelists for panel discussion. Our 4 speakers and Professor Gil Hong-geun, who will moderate the session. Mr. Yu Sung-pil of Jeju Technopark, Mr. Jung Ho-jun of Pohang City Hall, and Dr. Kim Dae-young of KMI. I would like to invite our full presenters and 3 panelists for panel discussion. Please welcome them with a big hand.
네, 오늘 세션 4번째.
So, Professor Gil Hong-geun of Hanggang National University will moderate the session. As soon as all the speakers and panelists take their seats, we will begin our panel discussion. Are we ready? Thank you.
네, 여러분 반갑습니다.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming and joining us for the 4th session of ICFC 2024 Climate Change Response. I am Gil Hong-geun, professor of the Hanggang National University. I will serve as a moderator of this session. In this session 4, we'd like to discuss how to respond to climate change, in particular in the area of fishing ports and fishing communities in response to climate change and environmental change and degradation. As we've heard from our 4 presenters, we are faced with climate change and climate crisis, natural disasters, and extreme weather conditions. In particular, as mentioned by Dr. Ko of KMI, carbon emissions from fishing boats and fishing vessels are causing serious issues with severe impact on the environment. And this is the widespread perception we have. That is why I'd like to talk about how to respond to climate change at fishing communities with the introduction of electric vessels into the Korean market and into global fishing communities. As mentioned, climate response and energy transition are emerging as two big paradigms globally. In e-mobility, the demand for e-mobility to replace fossil fuel is rising. The same goes true for the marine sector. The eco-friendly fuel is being introduced quite rapidly. Starting from EV, now we are seeing the transition to eco-friendly fuels even in marine sector. So we are going for the electrification of all vessels, whether on land, inland, or at the sea. We have to go for eco-friendliness. We have no other option. Fishing communities' response to climate change. Well, that's the topic we have to discuss, especially from the perspective of the policy support. and how to encourage industries and the fishing communities to go for more eco-friendly. I hope we can have a constructive discussion. Let me introduce our panelists here. We have 4 speakers. From Iceland, we have Mr. Kolvet Ortarsson Profe of Granafel. Please welcome him with a big hand. Mr. Profe has paid his visit to Korea, and now he is my close friend. He served the National Assembly of Iceland, and he also served as a member the Nordic Council. He has such a passion and influence in the area of carbon response. And he shared his presentations and his journey in building a platform for carbon reduction. And from UNFAO, we have Lucia Lopez de Aragon. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. We have Mr. Yoo Sung-pil, who is serving as the Director of a Policy Planning Agency of Jeju Technopark. Please welcome him with a big hand. And from Pohang City, and Pohang City government, we have Mr. Chung Ho-jun. He is responsible for a special battery zone support team. And in my far left, we have Mr. Kim Dae-young, Dr. Kim Dae-young, who is the Deputy President of KMI. And we also have Dr. Oh Tae-gun of Korea Fisheries Resources Agency. He is responsible for Management Support Division. Last but not the least, we have Dr. Ko Dong-hoon from KMI. Thank you very much for being here despite your busy schedules. Before we begin, although we have only 30 minutes, I'd like to summarize the presentations by our 4 speakers. Our speaker from FAO gave us the overview of a Blue Port initiative and how we should respond to climate change, focusing on fishing communities and fishing ports. For the great transformation, for blue transformation, FAO launched BPI initiative to encompass and cover climate responses in the area of society, economy, and the environment.
And then we have Mr. Oh Tae-gun from Korea Fisheries Resources Agency. He talked about Korea's efforts to create marine forest and fishing port gardening in Korea. I didn't know that our marine forest creation efforts was this advanced. So I think Korea's seafood like seaweed, kim, kelp, and different types of seaweed have global competitiveness. So I believe that we have outstanding ability in terms of cultivating farms for seaweed. Korea has more than 2,000 ports, and try to create gardens in those 2,000 ports I think is very ambitious but important goal, and it will help propel the blue carbon industry. So that was a very meaningful presentation.
And Mr. Prope from Iceland, Mr. Prope elaborated on Iceland's efforts for net zero and the electrification of fishing vessels, highlighting the international cooperation between Granafel and KMI with the participation of more than a dozen Korean companies. And through this international cooperation, we can serve as a beacon of the world.
이
Last but not least, we had Mr. Ko Dong-hun from Korea Maritime Institute. He introduced us to team adventures in terms of developing electric fishing boats between Iceland and Korea, and that was a very interesting initiative to hear about. Like Mr. Colben Proper mentioned, the cooperation between Iceland and Korea seems to be very solid. And beacon to the world, I think, was something that I remember from the presentation. So even if it's a small step, I hope that we can make it meaningful for all. Thank you for those very informative and insightful presentations. And Mr. Ko talked about Korea's efforts to develop electric fishing boats and reduce carbon emitted from the fishing industry, which because the main source of carbon emission was fishing boats. And there were some efforts made by Pohang and Jeju and the different local regions and governments in Korea. And they have been very passionate to lay out the infrastructure to further proliferate electric fishing boats. It seems that now there is a platform for cooperation, not just among Korean companies, but with Iceland companies as well. So I believe that energy transformation was very well handled in the presentation of Mr. Go. And one of the key outcomes was the Korea-Iceland MOU. And I'm very glad that we are seeing tangible outcomes now. So I would like to congratulate you on those efforts. And I'm sure that this will be a great opportunity for cooperation. So we have originally this session was to be around 60 minutes. We have about half of that time now. The four presenters have already made their case today. So now I would like to hand over the microphone to the panelists. I can give each panelist 5 minutes. And after that, we will use the remaining time for discussions and active conversation among everyone that is up on stage. And if we have time left, we will receive questions from the floor. First, I'd like to invite Mr. Yoo Seung-pil from Jeju Technopark to give any comments or questions. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Yoo Seung-pil, Director of Policy Planning Agency of Jeju Technopark, and I would really like to congratulate the presenters for their outstanding presentations. And I have a question regarding the blue part. And in terms of energy transformation to reduce carbon emissions, what kind of plans do you have?
알고 계신다면 앞으로 계획이 있으신다면
That question was to Miss Lucia Aragon. And then I have a comment and question for Mr. Ko. You talked about electric fishing boats. I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on Korea's pursuance for electric fishing boats. IMO and global community is really pushing for cleaner marine industry, and Korea has been actively legislating and taking action to help achieve carbon neutrality 2050 goal. Jeju Island in 2012 May announced the 2030 carbon-free island strategy. And in Korea, in Jeju Island, the renewable energy penetration is around 20%. EV penetration is around 10% in the island of Jeju. And then in the marine industry, we are developing strategies to become cleaner. For motorboats, there is around 1,960. 80% are currently small boats, and we have also 1,760 fishing boats that are large part of very small boats. So for the smaller boats, I think it's important to change them into green, eco-friendly boats. So December, we announced the 5-year plan to change these smaller boats to eco-friendly boats. And after that, this project was chosen as one of the priority projects. And in 2021 January, we developed a framework. And within the framework, we defined eco-friendly fishing boats as hydrogen-fueled boats and using ESG and also promoting hybrid boats. And many strategies and plans have developed after that. One example is in order to build green boats, for those that we are fine-tuning the strategies and policies with the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. We are investing around 500 billion Korean won annually for a couple of years, but this was not enough. So without more financial support from central government, we may not be able to continue this project. So from next year, we will be working together with different IT projects. So I believe that we need to have more support policies for boats that are below 10 tons. And for us, rather than new boats, so for the batteries that are wasted, we are trying to find ways to reuse that. We can use that for retrofitting boats and so on, which can reduce the cost by 30 to 50%. And we will continue to promote Jeju as an eco-friendly vessel island. And we will invest in R&D. We also visited Iceland as well. I know that Iceland is working together with KMI, and I hope that Jeju Island can also play a role in that cooperation. Thank you.
드립니다.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to the question, Mr. Ko?
케이스 바이 케이스로 가는 게 빠를 것 같아요. 나중에 또 모으기
I think it will be better to go case by case. So if you have any comments, you can discuss them now.
예, 말씀 잘 들었.
Thank you for the remarks. So Jeju Island and its eco-friendly vessels was mentioned by Mr. Ryu. So eco-friendly vessels can refer to pure electric and hybrid boats. And then, I mentioned in my presentation briefly, so in Jeju Island, they are trying to retrofit the existing boats to expand the project. And like Mr. Ryu mentioned, all of these efforts are being made cannot be really pursued without additional budget allocation from central government and other agencies. Local government budget may not be sufficient. The driver of energy transformation is opportunity, and that opportunity means funds. So this is a key challenge that I understand that many local governments are experiencing at the moment. So by funding and additional financial resources, without that, it may be difficult to carry on these efforts. Thank you for the comments. Next, I will move on to next panelist.
From Pohang City Government, we have Mr. Jung Ho-jun, who is responsible for Special Battery Zone. Good afternoon. I'm Jung Ho-jun. I'm from Pohang City Government. So you might wonder why we have someone from a local authority responsible for a special battery zone. My local authority, Pohang City, is making dedicated effort to reduce carbon emissions in collaboration, in tandem with the central government's effort for carbon neutrality in order to attract various national policy projects. For example, one Korean battery park. And I believe that my city government can also make a contribution to the paradigm shift and the energy transition at the city level. There are several projects and initiatives we are putting forth. It's been 3 years since we have collaborated with KMI and Grenfell in the retrofitting fishing vessels. In this journey, since we are a local authorities, we have seen so many things but to be done in such an area of improvement. That is why we have been applying for the sandbox district, the special innovation, a global special innovation district, to obtain certification from outside Korea. Over the last 3 years, as I told you, we have been working on this project, electrification of small vessels. And recently, we got admitted into the national project run by and governed by the Ministry of Finance and Planning. And next month, it will be finalized whether we will win this project or not. And at Pohang City level, and for this marine sector-related project, June this year, with 20 billion Korean won in national budget, we've secured a site in Ocean and Marine R&D Center. And this site will serve as a platform for marine industries, including electrification of fishing vessels. And Pohang City is building industrial ecosystem focusing on secondary batteries. The focus is mostly on the materials. So using these materials, we should be able to manufacture second-hand batteries, the finished product itself. And this kind of vision perfectly aligns with electrification of fishing vessels. That is why this project with Grenfell and KMI is part of our strategic direction. And electric fishing vessels would incorporate batteries, and they will operate at sea, and they will be recharged onshore. The thing is that we do not have a legal framework as to that yet, and there is such a vacuum of a relevant regulatory framework. That is why this is something we will take into account in pushing forward this project, so that this electric fishing vessel project serves as a prime water for the business in the city of Pohang. That's our vision and plan. That's what we are focused on. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jung, for your comment. The city of Pohang is dedicated to developing electric fishing vessel project through demonstration project and various support projects. I really appreciate the passion and dedication. I wish every good luck success to you in getting this deal, the project for the global special deregulation zone and innovation zone, especially your efforts for building a regulatory framework. Well, that's not easy at all, because everything depends on the size and the specifications and dimensions of each vessel. But as a special zone, I believe you can take the lead in this regard. And let me turn to the last panelist.
I'd like to invite Mr. Kim Dae-young from Korea Maritime Institute for the panel discussions. It's good afternoon. I am Kim Dae-young from KMI. I don't have a question, but I have some comments and remarks. And I would just like to add some additional information to what has already been presented. So last year, I think, was the hottest year in the history of Korea. So that is something that we can feel immediately. And when we talked about global warming and extreme weathers, it's not really a variable anymore. It's become a fixed factor in our lives. And how that impacts marine industry, well, it's severely and directly impacted by global warming. And so sustainable marine industry and for stable provision of fisheries foods, we need to be able to handle and cope with global warming. In that respect, I believe that the 4 presentations were very helpful. There was the blue port and then the electric boats and the marine forest that were all very interesting ideas. I believe that they really present the direction that we need to move forward in terms of addressing climate change. I would like to focus my speech on 2 aspects. First is the fishing boats. Electrification of boats, or the direction toward carbon reduction, I believe, is firm. But if you look at Korea's policies, it has all been focused on heightening efficiency and productivity of the boats. So in the future, I believe there needs to be a shift. We need to think about sustainability and stability of the boats. And to that end, we feel it every day. The port environment has changed. And the marine resources available in our oceans have changed as well. So retrofitting boats and different types of policies needs to consider these elements. And then second, there was the presentation on marine forest. So in the past, I understand that it was a local government project, but now it has become a central government project. So in the past, it was about improving the environment, but like mentioned today, now the whole focus or the purpose of marine forest is to reduce carbon emission. So I think now this project is serving different goals and objectives, and the project itself has expanded as well. And for Korea, I believe that a dedicated team on the marine forest efforts really helped that project to evolve. And there was emphasis on blue carbon today. I think if that is the case, we need to renew the policies. In some cases, the desertification is more problematic. In some cases, there is more focus on blue carbon, and so we need to make sure that there is no gap in terms of what we are aiming for through the marine forest projects. Lastly, I think one common element of the presentations was that community participation of local government, cooperation, partnership, solidarity. I think these keywords were emphasized. I think we need to find ways to attract private companies and fishing communities to actively participate in these projects. I think participation of private sector can help accelerate our efforts. and really turn these policies into actionable measures. Thank you for the comments.
To respond to the question before.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for the question about energy transition and the Blue Ports Initiative. Actually, energy transition is a topic that is super commented within the fishing ports and countries that are part of the initiative. We do have a global project currently undergoing related to energy transition. It is starting with the draft document on energy transition, climate change in blue ports, in which we actually invite experts like all of you to be co-authors of this document. From this publication, we are drafting a proposal. This is a global project, so there are a lot of different countries that want to join this proposal. Then we submit to international funding programs. And that's a global project, which we are still in very initial phases of the elaboration of the document. When it comes about national or local projects, that's a different story because countries or fishing ports ask FAO for technical assistance, and we do go to the fishing ports and do a general assessment of that fishing port. Depending on the needs and requirements of that fishing port, we do ask international experts, like all of you, to come and formulate the specific strategy that that fishing port should develop to reach that energy transition. Thanks.
Thank you, Lucia. Maybe Colbert might want to say something. Would you like to make a comment, Colbert? Or questions? Anything?
I just wanted to, again, give my heartfelt thanks to the invitation for staying here. I agree with every word that has been said here. Participation in events like these always fills you with hope, but in the end, it's all about funding, as I think a lot of people have said here. And I completely agree. I think it was Mr. Kim Tae-yong, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, his emphasis on the participation of both the private sector and also the public sector. That is fundamental in tackling these issues. It has to be a sort of a wholesome approach. You have to be bold enough when you're in government to put funding into projects, because if you don't have projects, you will not have solutions. That is the simple way to put it. So you need to put funding into projects, you need to have public-private partnerships with the private sector, and you need an international cooperation. But first and foremost, you need to be bold enough to put funding into projects.
이제 시간이 별로 없어서 우리
We don't have a lot of time left. Thank you for all of your comments. We will start to receive questions from the floor.
Who wants to make some comment or question? Oh yes, over there. Yes, please give him a mic, please.
Yeah.
And please identify yourself. And
Thank you very much. Seremos Kamturaki from Uganda. This morning, during the morning session, I did raise some concern for those of you around. And again, I want to echo this. You realize that in the past and until now, there are a lot of protocols, there are a lot of agreements, fish access agreements, but also fish trade protocols between, these are bilateral in nature, but also multilateral in nature, between the Asian countries and Africa, between the European Union or EU and the West Africa. But you realize that in all these agreements and protocols, they are just talking about accessing the fish and the products to those countries so that they can meet the demand for people who are this way from Africa. Now, this conference is about how do we tackle the problems facing the fishing community. Because the fishing communities, these are the people.
Please, could you make it shorter?
Yeah, I am going to make it shorter, but then I wanted to bring the point clear. These are the people who are involved in the harvesting, exploiting the fishery, which is to be exported to these countries for those people to consume. But there is no corresponding support for the fishing communities, despite all those protocols and agreements signed. And so, for me, I'm concerned. You find the very people who are exploiting the resource which is being exported, they remain poor and poorer every day and then. And this one is directly is the concern of the policies. The way policies are developed, they don't look at developing the fishing community, but then they are looking at taking away what the fishing communities are producing. So I think, and I would like, before I sit down, I would like to call upon the ICFC. I want the development agenda of this conference at the end of the day to refocus on how we can support, especially the fishing communities in Africa. You know, it's appalling there. You people, you haven't reached there. It is appalling. We need to do that. And me, as a representative of the fishing community, I feel so much concerned. Every other day when I came here, I'm hearing about a lot of innovations, a lot of, creativeness in whatever you're doing here, but we don't see them there. It's just a dream to me. So,
Okay.
yes, so we need to look at that.
We are running out of time
so
already. Please
yeah.
make it short, please, now.
Yeah, so
Just-
I'm concluding again.
Okay.
I'm concluding by calling upon this conference to refocus on developing the fishing communities in Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. 이 피싱 커뮤니티에 대한 스포트
Yes, so there was some talk about comments about supporting the fishing communities in Africa. Do we have any panelists who would like to respond? Maybe Lucia?
viewpoint of UN or FAO, so you make comments just
Sure.
very shortly, please.
Sure,
Because we are in short of time
I
now.
totally understand that comment, and it's not the first time that I listen to it. I just want to say, just focusing on what we have spoken in this session at least, and all the examples and case studies of my colleagues, everything that is being doing, all these good practices that we are sharing is to help livelihoods and communities to improve their lifestyles and improve the communities. So probably what our other colleague in the public was saying is that in very specific places in Africa, it's not been helped the way they should be. But what we are speaking here today is something positive and is impacting the livelihoods of all these South Korea, Iceland, and from the BPI communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. 우리 어태건 실장님, 아까 조금 전에 하시는 질문.
Was I'd like to turn to Dr. O to respond to this comment.
네, 김대영 본부장님께서 아까 이제
Yes, Mr. Kim Dae-young talked about the need to shift the policy focus regarding supporting fishing communities. So let me elaborate on that. And so in the past, this type of policy support was mainly driven by the government. And so now we are trying to attract participation of private companies. So large companies are now participating. We have 3 large corporates that are taking part in the marine forest efforts. And these private companies are also trying to improve their ESG standards. And in that sense, they are quite interested in the marine forest project. And so we are receiving funds to further expand the marine forest projects. So I believe that there can be some more potential for further expansion of the marine forests, especially Jeju Island and along the east coast of the Korean peninsula. Temperature increase is very evident. And in that sense, we need to find measures to address climate change, which means we are developing seaweeds that can endure higher temperatures. And in that sense, we are also diversifying our project. So southwest Sea of Korea, and then we have the ocean of Jeju. I think Korea is unique that we are exposed to different types of oceans, and we will try to customize our projects to serve the characteristic of each ocean. And like just mentioned, international cooperation is important. ICFC is in its second year. I believe there will be third, fourth conferences to further promote international cooperation. Thank you for those comments, Mr. O. I would like to thank everyone for being here today. The panel discussion was not as long as originally intended. I am sorry about that. But session 4 was on climate change response, and we looked at some eco-friendly technologies. We looked at the electric fishing boats, the marine forest, and blue ports. So I believe that we received a lot of information, and we also see many challenges regarding funding, acceptance, developing the right governance structure, the legal and regulatory framework. There are many hurdles that we need to overcome, especially when developing electric fishing boats. Was highlighted that we need policy support and regulatory remissions. And in that respect, like Mr. Colvin mentioned, in terms of climate change response, we all need to work together. We need to join hands and move forward together. I hope that we can all gather our expertise and commitment for a better future.
수준의 배터리 조절 기술.
Korea has cutting-edge battery technology, and we are also top-notch in terms of shipbuilding. Korea's shipbuilding industry, I believe, can help global community to reduce carbon emissions and achieve carbon neutrality goals. Today, we were talking about climate change response of fishing community, especially policy regarding the electric fishing boat development and also international cooperation. Thank you for being here with us till the very end.
I'd like to thank all our presenters and panelists. We are already behind the schedule, so let me speed up. We will take a group photo with all the speakers and panelists. Well, would you please wait just for a minute and please remain on the stage? I'd like to ask the participants for their cooperation. After the group photo of the panelists and speakers, we will take a group photo with all the audience. Thank you for your understanding. Session 4 is themed climate change response. We've listened to various best practices and cases as well as the policies in Korea and in other countries. I hope that we can make a contribution thanks to our discussion to Goal 7 and Goal 13 of Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So why don't we take a group photo with speakers? Please move forward. Then please look at the camera.
1. 아니, 안 하신대요. 그건 안 하신대요. 네, 저 플로어에 있는 분들도 해야죠. 네, 지금부터
I'd like to ask the audience to come forward for a group photo. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
안전하게 올라오실 수 있도록 가이드 부탁드리겠습니다. 네, 한 분씩 계단 위로 올라와 주시기 바랍니다. 네, 현재 자리에 앉아 계신 모든 분들 앞으로
I'd like to ask all the participants to come forward onto the stage for a group photo. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
잠시만요. 촬영 잠시만요. 네, 그럼
Then let us take this photo together.
make a smile. Cheese. Clap the hands. Clap the hands, please. Louder, louder. Thank you. Thank you for coming. 네, 이것으로 2024 세계
This concludes session 4 of ICFC 2024. Thank you very much for your cooperation. This concludes day 2 of ICFC 2024. We will continue with session 5 as well as the closing ceremony. I would like to ask for your cooperation. Thank you.